So today we're gonna speak about cinema, and specifically we're gonna speak about the film director that is kind of recently deceased. He died in 2013 and is not that much known, unfortunately, in the West. And it's a Russian director named Alexei Balabanov. He died youngish. He died being 54. He was born in 1959 in then big city called Sverdlovsk. Now it's called Yekaterinburg, after the fall of the Soviet Union. And he was an outsider. He was a very specific and peculiar person, and he had a cult status in his homeland and still has it. And his fame got even bigger after his death, although he was really appreciated and celebrated at home while alive and while working. But he had this misfortune of not being really worth it. So now we're going to speak a bit about him, and we're going to take a look at 4 different films made by him, which are his best in my opinion. So let's start. So first he studied foreign languages, and he became an interpreter for the army. And with his missions, he went to Asia and Africa. He was quite fluent in English, and he spoke Arabic. And he took part in Afghanistan war in the 80s. And then after the army, he started working as a personal assistant of a film director in his hometown, Sverdlovsk, in local film studio. Later he moved to St. Petersburg and graduated from the Film Institute courses aimed for the film directors. And his real career in film began in 1990, together with the fall of the Soviet Union. While studying to become a film director, he met his friend and future collaborator, Sergei Selyanov, who is a famous film producer, an independent film producer in Russia. And together they founded a film company called STV. And this film company produced the majority part of Balabanov's films. He was quite productive, and it took him not that long to make a film, and he usually wrote all his films. So for the most part, he's a true auteur, or his films are either written by him, or the beginning of his career he adapted Beckett's play to the realities of contemporary Russia, where the young man is released from the hospital, his first film in 1991, and is searching in modern St. Petersburg at the end of the 80s a place or a flat or a room to live. And full of absurdities and full of this nihilism and full of paradoxes of current life, and witnessing the changes that Russia is going through at the moment. And at the same time, this film is some kind of art of time as well, and it's almost in black and white or in brown and white. And his second film was an adaptation, also very poetic film by Kafka, The Castle, the famous unfinished novel by Franz Kafka. So also very, very specific, very stylized look at the surroundings. And from then on, he started making, let's call them contemporary films, and films based purely on his own scripts, not an adaptations by classic literature. So his most famous film, and the one that gave him a cult status in Russia and in all the Russian-speaking countries, and the film that was shown abroad as well, is Brother, or Brat in Russian, and he made a sequel, Brother 2 or Brat 2. So these films made him in a way a national hero. These films are being recited and quoted by the audiences, and even now, if you quote some famous line from this film in Russia, you're gonna be recognized as a person watching and knowing Balabanov's work. So, what were the themes of Balabanov? Most of his films take time during the late 80s or mid 90s or late 90s. And usually they speak about outsiders, about people who are, for some reason, do not fit in with society or with the contemporary world, and are forced to deal with the world through violence and sometimes through sexual violence. And not all his films, but most of them are about transgression, about provoking a person to sympathize with the outsider, to sympathize with a man of with a violent man. But at the same time, those outsiders and violent men, they usually are fighting for some higher purpose, that higher purpose being their understanding of what's right or wrong, or this understanding of what morality or moral behavior is. And some of his films, and in my opinion, his best ones are period films. Films that are not contemporary, that take place at the beginning of the 20th century. So these are the less popular with the general audiences and the more arty ones. And today we're gonna take a look at two of his more arty films, and let's call them let's call them contemporary films. And all those four films that I chose are, in my opinion, the best of his and are worth your attention. And please do seek it and rent it. So, first of all, let's speak about the film that is number one in my opinion. It's his fourth film, and the artiest of all. It's called Of Freaks and Men, and it takes place at the beginning of the 20th century, St. Petersburg, then the wealthy capital of the Russian Empire, and it's about the business of pornography then, about photographs and about pornographic films being made there at the time. And keep in mind that the very film technology was just born and very new at the time. And the film uses beautiful browns and yellows and blacks and whites, sepia colors. And it's about a very evil, disgusting man and his attempt to make money through pornography and through profiting from the poor or profiting from naive young souls. And a very famous Russian film and theater actor is playing this role, let's call of this evil man. And this man has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, but still we are looking at this evil and we are fascinated because we're trying to understand what's driving this cold, wicked heart. And this film was shown in the Cannes Film Festival, but at the sidebar section, not the main competition, at the certain regard side section. And it's important to know that Balabanov's two films, the first one, Happy Days, a modern adaptation of Beckett's play, and Brother, those two films were shown in Cannes at the side section of The Certain Regard. And although he made 13 films, although one of those films is unfinished because the main actress died in a car crash. So let's say that he made 12 and a half films, feature films. So although he was productive and although he released films every few years or sometimes every year, he has invited him to the main competition, and of course he had bitter feelings about that. There were lots of articles in Russia about why he wasn't recognized abroad, although he was such a bright and distinct talent. And the answer is maybe because of his transgressions and his political incorrectness, because characters in his films, the ones that depict contemporary Russia, usually commit either violent acts or act immorally or speak politically, using politically incorrect words and terms, and express anti-Semitic or xenophobic ideas about the darker-skinned people from Russia, like Chechens or people from Caucasus, and usually they praise those, I mean, the characters, not the director himself, of course. Please do make the distinction. They usually talk about Russian soul, about what's good for Russia, that Russia is great, that foreigners do not understand a thing, that foreigners are phonies if they are Westerners, or they are somehow below if they are from Russia but not Russian, or from the southern regions of Caucasus and Chechen Republic. So maybe this political incorrectness was the answer to the big question: why such a talented and distinctive voice with lots of films made during his lifetime wasn't ever invited to any main competition by the three main film festivals. And although Balabanov was quite private and didn't like to give interviews and talk with the press, and in a way he was reclusive and he wasn't very keen on about going to the radio or television, and he was a very friendly and open man with the ones whom he considered are his friends. So his bitter feelings about not being recognized abroad are known among his friends and Russian film critics. But things are the way they are, and this year Cannes Film Festival wanted to have a retrospective of his cult Russian film Brother, made in 1997, that made him a star at home. In this excerpt, we're gonna see a stylistic pattern that he's using quite a lot, meaning the main character is driving a car, or is walking in the street, or is riding a bicycle or a motorcycle, and the music is playing, usually rock music, Russian rock music, but not necessarily, and we're watching a character either making some preparations or just going from destination A to destination B, from point A to point B, and the music is playing, and we are seeing the very drive or the very walk. And this trope he used to use quite a lot in his films. So we're gonna see the same trope here in the film Brother or Brat, and we're gonna see the same trope in the excerpt of from his film of Freaks and Men, and we're gonna see the same pattern in his most transgressive, and some Russian critics think his best film, namely Cargo 200. What is Cargo 200? When Soviet Union was having a war with Afghanistan in the 80s. Dead Soviet bodies of dead young Soviet soldiers were secretly brought home, and for the society not to know about the big losses that Soviet Union had in Afghanistan. Those coffins with dead soldiers were called, using euphemism, Cargo 3000. So his film, Balabanov's film, Cargo 200, is a story about Soviet Union in 1984, about the war in Afghanistan, which is happening somewhere outside the frame in the background, and about the rotten policeman who catches the girl and makes her his slave, and in the background we're seeing a rotten corpse by her fiance, dead soldier, brought back from Afghanistan. And this film shows all the ugliness and all the rottenness of the society of the Soviet Union in 1984. And I think the very year is deliberate. It has some links with the Orwell, and of course it's the time before Gorbachev came to power in 1985. So the very rottenness, the very stagnation, appearances that people are keeping, and no disillusionment with the communism, disillusionment with the official propaganda, and we see this side of common life and common people, which is never shown in the films both made during the era or in the Russian Federation now. So it's very shocking and transgressive film, but it's like a bitter pill that you sometimes need to take in order to understand art, society better. With this unflinching look that Balabanov is using. The last film that I'm going to talk about is film Morphine. Morphine is an adaptation of the famous Russian author Mikhail Bulgakov. It's the short story of the same name, Morphine, and it takes place just before and the Russian Revolution and during the Russian Revolution. And it depicts autobiographical details of the very author himself. He was a young medical student. After graduating with his medical diploma, he was sent to some faraway provinces in Russia, and where there was shortage of medical equipment and medicines, and he was treating poor, uneducated peasants, and gradually he became a morphine addict. And as we see the main character descending into addiction, we see some outside the frame the Russian society descending into chaos, from the imperial times to the revolutionary chaos. In my opinion, is the most touching and the most beautiful of Balabanov's film to look at. If there is more to say about Balabanov, it's that he was a very private man. He had strong beliefs and opinions. He was never seeking fame. He was never seeking recognition in an obvious way. All his films are about his inner pain, inner longings, about his understanding what's right or wrong, about outsiders, about people pushed to their limits, and they are important not only for their themes but also for their form, because his films are quite quick, they are not boring, they usually take some genre formula, sometimes breaks the formula, sometimes uses the formula in a traditional way. If you want to start watching his films, maybe the easiest option is to start with the film Brother, made in 1997, because it's the easiest to get into and to understand and to see the decay of the Russian society at that time, when the Soviet Union collapsed and capitalistic laws were introduced and people were impoverished and trying to survive the way they managed to. And then to go to his more arty films like Of Freaks and Men, which is really not for the faint of hearted, or Morphine, which is much also not a light film, but much easier to understand. And please, if you have a strong stomach and if you are not so worried about psychological terror, then watch Cargo 2000, because it's both is historically accurate and it's based on a story that the film director was told by an acquaintance of his, and it says very ugly things about the human nature and about the society in general. So thank you for your attention, and hopefully we'll meet again, and I'll make much more video blogs about worthy film directors and about films that haven't gotten enough attention.